Welcome to In the Fire, a podcast for the young families of Chapelgate Presbyterian Church. Marriage and parenting are a wonderful blessing and are extremely rewarding, but they're also really hard and can leave us feeling exhausted, overwhelmed, and defeated. That's exactly why we started this podcast, to help families see how the gospel injects encouragement, comfort, and hope into the daily grind of our lives, and to remind you that you're never alone in the struggle. There is another In the Fire.
Welcome back to In the Fire. It is season 3, episode 1, and my name is still Rob Gicking. However, instead of a director of Young Family Ministry, I'm the pastor of Young Family Ministry. So you may have noticed we were gone for a little while, and that's because I was a little bit busy, A, with our twins, which is very exciting, but B, finishing my ordination process, which is finally done. Very exciting. So we're really looking forward to diving back into our podcast where we deal with some of the realities of life, living in a fallen world, in marriage, with kids, and just being part of the journey of following Jesus. So I'm joined here today by a very good friend of mine, Tonya Cherry. Tonya, say hi.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah.
Hi, audience.
Hi, audience. We're excited, and I thought, it's season 3. The hard-hitting question has been such a good thing, but sometimes it's good to just change it up. So here's what I'm thinking, Tonya. Okay. Instead of a hard-hitting question, I want you to tell me one thing that you love right now and one thing that you hate, all right?
Oh, well, that's easy because we were just talking about it, but I love my dog, Bella, more than anything in the whole world. She is my best friend. She's my therapy. She's great. But she broke her hind leg, and so in the past few months, we have had to pay $9,600 to get it fixed, and that's not even the part I hate. The part I hate is when we were just sitting in that family ministry meeting, and I was the only person in the room who would pay that, and you guys were teasing me because I spent all that money because she's just a dog, and so I hate the fact that you guys ganged up on me.
Well, I gotta say, I'm sticking to my guns there. I just can't imagine spending that much money. There's an expiration date on animals.
Oh my gosh! They are not. No.
Listen, at the end of the day,
God told you. God said to you, "These are the animals, and I want you to name them and take care of them. Take care of them."
Yeah, and then He said, "Take dominion over the earth." Oh. And part of that, if I may, is deciding at a certain point that this money has a better use than my limping, drooling, pooping on the floor dog.
Who is God's creation.
Yes, but has no soul.
You're just mean. Forget it. Okay. All right, Rob. Tell me something you love and something you hate.
I love watching you squirm as I talk about this.
Okay.
That makes me happy.
Nice friend. You're a pastor now? Is that what you said? You're
that's
pastor?
right.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Encouragement is not my spiritual gift.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think, let's see, what do I love right now? I love Christmas.
Yes.
That's been so nice. We're recording this at Christmas time. And so just seeing the lights on the houses and in the neighborhoods has been really, really fun. Let's see, what do I hate? What do I hate right now? Oh, I hate this move toward all electric vehicles. I find it despicable.
Like the Tesla thing?
Yeah, like Teslas and like everybody's kind of having these electric cars.
Okay.
Even Lamborghini, which is like an amazing company, is now moving towards electric. Ferrari is moving towards electric. I just find it disingenuous and offensive.
Okay.
It makes me angry because I want to hear vroom vroom and not what. Because if you guys don't know, like if you've never been around an electric car, when they drive through the parking lot, they have to make this little noise because they're so quiet that they add a noise to the external so that people will hear the cars, and it's like, hey, and I'm like, what is this? This is so backwards to me.
Yeah.
We had a noise.
Yeah,
it was an engine. It made a great noise. And listen, if you're going to sit here and get on me about global warming,
I'm not gonna. Not me. I'm not gonna. Anyway. The audience might. I don't. Not me.
Somebody's out there like, you know what I hate, Rob? Yeah. You and your dumb show. Anyway.
And the fact that you hate dogs. But go ahead.
And the fact that I hate dogs. I like dogs. I don't love dogs. They're a lot of work. And they make a mess. And sometimes they give me allergies.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll give you a little bit of grace on the allergy thing.
But I am not a cat person.
Oh no, don't
let that be on the record. Well, anyway, now that we got the difficult stuff out of the way, Tonya, why don't you tell us what your role here is at Chapelgate and what
Okay.
you do in our ministries.
Okay, great. And I just first want to say thank you for letting me talk about this because I'm just so passionate about it. I think it's so important for the church. But I am a ministry director here at Chapelgate, and I direct the Keystone ministry. I started about 7 or 8 years ago, and it is a ministry for families affected by special needs. And so the family part's really important because it's not just a Sunday morning ministry with children with disabilities. I try really hard to make it a ministry where we're loving and caring for and supporting the family. And it goes beyond Sunday morning. And then the second ministry that I lead is the 3418 ministry. Do you know how that ministry got its name, Rob?
Yes.
You do?
The Lord draws near to the brokenhearted.
Good job. Okay. Yeah.
Psalm 34:18.
I named it that because I wanted people to ask, what does that mean? And it was.
Oh, sorry. What does it mean, Tonya?
What? It means. I'm a counselor. I work in the counseling center here, but I just have always found a lot of value in groups, support groups. People that have similar experiences and struggles meeting together, encouraging one another. And so even though we have a great counseling center, I was always interested in support groups. And a few years ago, there were actually 2 people in our church that I think had talked to several pastors about, hey, could we have a support group, like a free support group that meets, a couple times a month to work with families who are affected by mental illness. And it would be for adults that have other adults in their lives that are struggling. And I think when the people brought it to my attention, it was more for caregivers, which is so incredibly important. But then when I started, thinking through that and what that would look like and what I could do, for me, I was like, well, of course, we also need to, if we're doing caregivers, we also need to be the people who are actually coping and struggling with mental health issues. So 3418 is our ministry of support groups for people who cope with various mental health issues, and another group for people who love and care for adults in their lives with mental health issues. So those are the 2 things.
Yeah, and those are 2 really important ministries because they're hard ministries. And I don't mean that from necessarily on a large scale. I mean that it's difficult for churches to have ministries like these.
Yes.
It's one of the things that, this is sort of like Mike's vision, right, as the head pastor, but
Yes.
sort of having a place that we don't ignore the realities of life. And we can't, no church can do everything for everyone,
Sure.
but these 2 ministries are really important because they're real, as you have families who are going through that, hey, I've got children with special needs or a child with special needs, it can be easy for those families probably to feel like there's no place for them.
Oh, absolutely.
And so here to say, here's a ministry built to support and encourage you.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really interesting. So how did you kind of get involved? What drew you to that, or where did you get your start in that ministry?
Oh, wow. Okay. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, before I actually worked with kids as a counselor, I was a special ed teacher in a residential treatment center. Then after, I taught, and then I worked in the with people with mental health issues.
So did you know you wanted to do that, or was that something that you sort of fell into?
Interestingly, I fell into it because what happened was I was working at the church, and there was a single mom who had a son who had special needs. And I think we were in a meeting or something, and somebody happened to mention this woman and her son, and that there really wasn't anywhere for him. Everybody was trying their best to make modifications or accommodations for him to stay in Sunday school with his peers. And, people were trying so hard, but what they were trying wasn't really working because they didn't know. None of the people had worked with families with special needs. And so even though they were really jumping through hoops to try to help this woman and her son, in the end, they felt that there wasn't a way that they could take good care of him so that everybody would be safe and that he would be safe, and they left our church. And
wow.
so, when in the meeting when this was talked about, I just kind of spoke out and was like, that can't happen. Like,
Yeah.
That can't happen. We can't have, families leaving because their child is too hard, or because we don't feel equipped. And so I think I just I had no intention of going that route. I just was being very outspoken with my opinion, and our leadership here, I gotta say, like, they hear you when you make suggestions or there's something on your heart, and a couple days later they just said, hey, Tonya, we want to talk to you. How about you start a ministry?
Wow.
And I think I was like, what kind of ministry? No, I work
Yeah.
here full time. Like, what? And they go, how about like a special needs thing, do a disability thing. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. You guys need to think about that. And you guys
That's
need to
right.
right. Like, I'm telling you guys to do that. And I was like, I don't even know how. I've been out of that, field for so long, whatever. And, but it was probably Mike, I don't know, but just said something like, whoever's going to do this has to be really passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you are really passionate about it. I didn't feel equipped, but I did agree that I was very passionate. And so I prayed about it. And I really felt like God had put it on my heart. And that is why I jumped on it when I heard what had happened. And so that's how it started. I just, I said I needed a lot of time to kind of research it, like what
Right.
that would look like. I didn't even know like the disability buzzwords anymore, And they were like, whatever you need in order to start this ministry, we'll support you. And so Keystone was born.
Wow. And do you remember how long ago that
I know,
was?
it's not terrible. 7 or 8 years. But yeah, it's been.
That's incredible. There's so much in that story that I'm drawn to. I mean, the fact that God used a sad event, perhaps.
Yeah.
To birth clarity on your passion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like God used that sadness of that family leaving to light a fire in you, or at least make you aware of that fire, and then to have a structure that says, hey, we know you're not necessarily like you don't have a PhD in this. That's okay. And what I like about that is oftentimes, especially where we are, right? We're in Howard County, we're in Maryland. It is one of the most competitive job markets, one of the most professionalized areas in the country. And we can fall into the trap that God works in ministry the same way we work in career paths, which is, if I'm going to be effective, I need to learn, I need to become proficient, I need to network properly, I need to do all the things that make me an effective career person. And God has a huge habit, right? Like an awesome and scary habit of using like ill-equipped, underexperienced people to do his work. I mean, you think about even how that ties into the type of ministry that Jesus did, right? Jesus is not going after the cream of the crop, right? He's going after the broken people.
Absolutely.
And there's a sense in which we can believe that ministries like Keystone are for broken people, but I'm just a normal person, and that's not the way of the gospel. And so, in some sense, like I'm just summarizing your story here.
You're doing great.
Like,
You're doing great.
Man, like how cool to say, no, we're all bruised, we're all broken, we all have our issues. So how can I look at someone else with different issues and say, well, like I don't have time for your issues?
Exactly.
Because Jesus does, right?
Absolutely.
So, man, that's really, really cool. So tell me a little bit about, because one of the things about Keystone is, if you're not in Keystone, like if you don't have a child who's in Keystone, you may not know what goes on there, right? Because it is kind of one of those almost like background running ministries, right? Versus like men's ministry or women's ministry, where like everybody falls into that camp. So what is Keystone Ministry? What does it look like?
What does it look like? What we do is we, when a family comes, or it started with the families we already had here, is on a Sunday, how Keystone looks is that their child, after we meet a child, that has special needs. I sit down with the parents. I get a lot of information about the child, what they would need, what supports would help them succeed, any medical issues, whatever. And then after I have that information, I find 2 volunteers. My volunteers are PALS, Patient Accepting Loving Servants.
Oh, I didn't know that was an acronym. Yeah.
That's what it is, yes. I find 2 PALs that if the kid had medical issues, I might try to find a PAL that had nursing experience.
Got it.
If they're a child who elopes, I might have 2 high schoolers that can run fast. Yeah. So I find 2 volunteers for that child so that on Sunday mornings, that child has a one-on-one, a PAL, that stays with them and ensures that they can be with their peers, but get the support that they need to not just be in the room, but to be part.
So one of the things that Keystone does is not just pull these children off to the side,
No.
but actually helps them integrate with their peers. And so that's why you'll see Keystone kids in Kaleidoscope on Sunday morning, our children's ministry.
Always. You will see, and it's even hard to tell because, the PALs are there, but not necessarily. But all of our young children are in Kaleidoscope on Sunday mornings with their PAL. Again, you do family ministry, and Abby. I think another way that I'm lucky in terms of that is even other churches that have special needs ministry, the leaders of the regular children's church ministry aren't maybe as flexible as you guys are because I don't get any pushback. No matter what kind of kid I'm saying, hey, this is the kid. These are going to be the 2 PALs. I never get pushback or worry from the children's ministry people. Like, well, I'm worried about that, or that's going to happen, or what should I do? They're just like, okay. And I'm like, you need to trust the PALs. And the PALs are trained, I should have said. Like, I do train the PALs.
Right.
Yeah, on a Sunday morning, if you walked into children's church, I think there's 6 little guys in there. Like I said, you probably wouldn't know who the Keystone kids were. That's the goal. The goal is for them to be in there with their peers and, playing the games, listening to the lesson. And it's not about, well, they probably don't even understand the lesson. First of all, they understand much more than people realize. And also, worship isn't always about understanding the lesson. Worship is being with a community of believers and, bringing glory to God and using different ways to express how much we love him. And so it's really cool. I think in all the ministries here, most of my kids would be in children's church, but that it has worked out on Sunday mornings with everyone, the parents, the leaders, that our kids could be part.
I think it's beautiful. And I think that being part seems to be a very important aspect when you are engaging in this type of ministry. And one of the things that I wanted on you here is to share what you've shared, but also to ask questions about how we can engage, we the young families of Chapelgate, or we just people who are at Chapelgate, or maybe I'm at a different church and I'm thinking about how to get something like this going. One of the things that's been really, really hard for me is when I don't understand the particular challenge going on. So and this is where 3418 falls in the same category. Let's say I'm someone who's like, I don't struggle with mental health, or I don't swim in that, that waters. And I go, now I got this person who's telling me like, hey, I have depression, or I have bipolar, or I have et cetera, et cetera. And I'm going, I have no clue what that is. Like, do I treat you differently now? Like, are there words that I shouldn't use? And sometimes it can just feel so overwhelming to wade into that pool that I just kind of stay on the side.
Absolutely.
Almost like out of respect, really. Not like because I don't want to be involved in that. Like,
right.
I just don't know what to do, and I'm afraid of making a mistake. So how would you advise people these pals probably don't know what to do either when they first show up. Right. You train them, but what are some of those key points of training that translate well to Rob and Kate as they see maybe friends who have children with special needs or people who have maybe some struggles with mental health? I don't know anything, but does that mean I shouldn't engage? How would you
Nope.
talk to that person?
I mean, think about, when they said, oh, you can lead this ministry, I was like, I haven't done this in 20 years. I don't even know what the things are. Like, so, I mean, the leader of this ministry is someone who was not equipped. I wasn't equipped in leading ministry. I hadn't worked in the special needs field. So I'm a really good example of how a person who is not equipped or is, I had a little bit more experience than others, but that someone who's not equipped can do it. The leader wasn't equipped. And so I think the two biggest things is just realizing that you don't need to be equipped. You need to be passionate. You need to love people. You want to serve. And I think the second part of that, specifically about you don't need to be equipped, and I will equip you. What you need to know, I will teach you, or I will have the parents teach you, or you will shadow for a year first. You don't need to be equipped because there are resources to support you in what you're doing here in this ministry. And so if someone was like, that'd be really cool to do, but I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what that's like. I really haven't been around people with disabilities. It's okay. It's okay. Like that's okay. That's a lot of people haven't. And even special needs families would be like, that's okay.
Yeah. Let's even talk about that for a second, because special needs families, right? Did they know how to handle special needs before they had their child?
Absolutely not.
In most cases, no.
They're still learning. They're just like, like me, like I had never raised a 12-year-old. And then when my son was 12, I was like, I don't know how to do this. Like, I've counseled other people's kids, but,
well, but I think that's a realization for me even right now as we're talking is, oh yeah, like it's just so hard to snap out of the foundational belief that I need to know what I'm doing first.
Right.
Then I can be useful.
Right.
And if I'm just thinking as you're talking, look at Moses, right? God says, go to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. And what does he do? He kind of kicks the dirt and hems and haws for. I was like, I can't do that.
Right.
I don't know how to do that.
Exactly.
I have no experience doing that. I've never led a group of people. I literally live out here in the middle of nowhere, chasing sheep around the desert, and it's like, he's like, go.
Absolutely.
And then you think about David. You're going to be the king of Israel. Well, I'm a shepherd. I've thrown rocks at some bears at some point, and I hit a lion with my staff. But that's about it. I am a little kid. I don't know what I'm doing, but God does that. And
Absolutely.
there's an aspect of faith, I think, on our part to say, I would love to do that. That desire might be from God, but I don't know how to do that. But can I trust that God is going to walk with me in it? He's going to reveal things about myself, that I'm going to get better at this, that I'm going to become a more useful pal, or a more useful, friend, counselor, lover, things like that. And so I think to me, that's just really encouraging as a young family to go, man, I have friends who have kids with special needs. I don't need to walk on eggshells around them. I need to just say hey man, how's it going? How can I be praying for you? Hey, any chance you can head out and we can go, go bowling or something,
right.
To treat that other dad like a normal dad, and let him inform me hey, I can't do that. Or maybe I can, but right. Rather than doing nothing because I'm afraid.
That is exactly the thing. I know it's very cliche, but God doesn't call the equipped, he equips those he calls. I have that on my volunteer wall. And there's just so much truth in that.
And we're all called, right? Because you
absolutely.
Said it earlier, the communalness of Christianity.
They're part of the body.
Yes.
It needs to be the whole body. That's our verse. And if you're leaving out people with disabilities, the body can't be complete. And so I think that a part of that, what you said, especially when we're thinking about young families, when people just ask me, whatever, I can't really volunteer, or I don't know what to do or something, but I love that we have this ministry.
Yeah.
And they'll say that, and they'll be like, I don't know, even though they're not actually offering to be a pal or whatever, it's fine. Because sometimes people just be like, what should I do? And I just think about, the first thing I'll always say is, you need to see them. You need to see them.
What does that look like?
Well, it right now, because you don't know what to do when children who are autistic stim like that. So you just kind of, you don't want to embarrass the mom because their kid's flapping their arms. So you just kind of don't make eye contact. You're not being rude. You don't give a dirty look. You don't stare, but you kind of like look over them because in your mind you're thinking, I don't want to embarrass her.
Right.
But what that feels like is you're avoiding me. Not that you're ignoring. I think that parents don't feel like you're ignoring them, but they feel like you're avoiding them.
Well, I appreciate what you just said because that puts it in the, like, that's a better way of expressing what I feel sometimes in my own life when I'm in that environment of like, I don't want to embarrass anybody.
Absolutely.
So I'm not going to point it out.
Right.
But then I'm like, okay, now am I ignoring or avoiding you? I don't want to do that either. And then I'm just like, it's like a ping pong in my mind of like, don't draw attention to this, but also don't totally ignore this. And it's like, it can cause stress to the point where I'm just like, hey, I'm going to back away.
Right. And it's not it's not like a mean thing. It's just, it's a fear. It's a fear of, you don't want to make these moms' life harder. You don't want to embarrass them, but nobody wants to be invisible. You'd rather have somebody ask you dumb questions about your kid than to just pretend that your kid's not there. And I think, and you'll know the script, but like in the Bible, when it says Jesus saw the blind man and the disciples saw him see. Yeah. And then they asked him, about it. And I go back to that verse a lot. Like, Jesus was setting the example, which, like, as a church, like, we need to see them. Like, I'm a leader. I need to see them and acknowledge them. And then people, maybe teenagers, maybe anybody will be like, oh, wow, like, she's just talking to them. She's whatever. And then they might even ask me about it. But I think if we as leaders, if we as the church, that we see them, that just right there can open up so many doors. And that's just kind of the first step. Like, my first step isn't like, oh, come volunteer.
Right.
The first thing is like, see them, acknowledge them, ask a question. It's okay. I mean, you've heard people even before who've had children who have died and nobody will mention the child ever because they don't want to hurt the parents.
Right.
I get that. Like, in that oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
that
like
makes sense,
logically.
right? Yeah. But they had a beautiful, wonderful child that they loved. And they want that child's memory to be acknowledged. They want people to know that they had 3 kids, not 2 kids. You don't want people to just save your feelings by never talking about your kid.
Yeah.
And so I do just feel like as young families, just acknowledging, like, even if the kid's screaming and you're like, I don't know, whatever, like, go up and say hi. Go up and say hi, or just make eye contact and smile.
Right.
I think some people might even avoid that because, like, if they make eye contact and smile, then they might talk to them, and then they might have to go over there, and the kid is, like, that kid doesn't talk. Like, should I look at the kid? Should I talk to the kid? Like, if a kid is nonverbal, should I still talk to the kid? Like, and yes, definitely you should. But people really, they don't know that. They don't know. And people sometimes ask me questions, and they're like, I know this is dumb. I know this is dumb, whatever, but should I have done this or should I have done that? And I am like, bring it on. Ask me questions. By asking questions, you're acknowledging, you're caring. You're starting the process of engaging and interacting.
Yeah.
You can ask me, you can ask the parents. But I do just think if young families or any families in this church or people just start to see these kids and these parents as just being there, but also as being part. I don't want, with Keystone, I don't want to be like, okay, we're a place that has special needs families. I want us to be a place that just loves people well. Yeah. Just loves, because these are just people. They're just families. And so it could be easy, you alluded to it before, that Keystone can very easily be a silo ministry. And so I work hard to make it not a silo ministry because it's a very, specific group. It could very easily kind of be that thing attached on the side
Right.
Right. And so I've tried, and that was a learning curve for me because it was a goal at the beginning, but I was like, I don't know what that looks like, but over time, I've kind of learned, and that's one of the reasons I say it's a family ministry, because I work really hard to not only have my moms be a community of women going through the same things, but I also try really hard to get them involved in other church communities.
Mm-hmm.
You have a young family thing coming up, and
Yes.
I really try to target my young families. Like,
Yeah.
hey, guy, they're doing this thing. Make sure you read Rob's emails.
Right.
Because it's really sweet. Like, this little group of women, we are all friends, and we love each other, and we are a great little friend group, and we're not hurting anybody, and we're loving life, whatever. And that feels like really good for me. But I want to see them have a place in the church other than just Keystone.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, because with anything, right, we can find our affinity group, right? Like let's move away from Keystone or even 3014 and let's go in a different direction. If all of my community is my small group, but I'm never interacting with the rest of the church, I'm never coming to other opportunities where I could serve and maybe meet new people, I go, in some sense, I'm hiding myself away at the cost of my brothers and sisters. And I'm also hiding myself away at my own cost, right? Because they have gifts, they have
Absolutely.
stories, they have things that would encourage and strengthen my own faith. And so to say, yeah, we want to meet you where you're at in a way that makes a lot of sense, in a way that's really tailored to help you in your journey, but also you need everyone, and everyone needs you.
They do. Everyone does need them. It's so interesting. This is kind of random, but like the worship that, and I know I'm biased, but the worship that happens in Keystone is so amazingly different and wonderful. We worked for 2 years. My teens are in a classroom on Sunday morning because our church doesn't have a teen-specific ministry during service.
Right.
So the little guys are with their pals in children's church, but the teens are with us. And we worked for like 2 years on learning how to pray, like who we pray to and why we, everything like that. And it's so funny because so many of my volunteers during that time of seeing the kids, stop praying to, Darth Vader and SpongeBob,
Right.
start praying to God. And on their own, I can remember the Sunday that one of them just said, "I love you, Jesus."
Wow.
And so I can remember one of our elders who helps me just being like, that's worship.
Yes, it is.
That's worship. And so it is, it's just, it's a beautiful community. And I love that those are my kids and I get to hear them pray every week. And I would love to, but not just them and me and my volunteers, I want the church to be able to be touched by that as well. Because what you just said, those families and those kids, they have something to offer.
Yes.
And you're missing out on it when you don't, I'm not even speaking specifically about volunteering, but when you're not engaging and interacting and including, you are missing out.
Right.
On some really beautiful, you're missing out on moms that have 2 kids with disabilities, but are always willing to help other people, or who say, this is so hard, but this is what brings me to the foot of the cross every day.
Mm.
I get to hear stories about what God has done through these kids that are just more beautiful, than anything you can imagine. When you see a mom whose child will never, ever speak the words, "I love you." And you pray with that mom and you hear how much, she laments, but also when you just hear her faith and her trust in the Lord, that's beautiful. That's encouraging. Yeah. And so, gosh, I just feel like they want you to acknowledge them and I want you to volunteer, whatever, but also you will be so blessed. And I do think I said, you want to see them. And when you think about Jesus also was intentional. I mean, Jesus was intentional about everything, but like with people with special needs. Like in all of the people in the crowd, he saw them. When he went out on the boat, and the guy who, had his demons or, and I would say in this day and age, like mental health issues or, whatever, or dealing with whatever, he wanted to go. He went there. He wanted to interact. Like he pursued. Another example we have in the Bible, I mean, it's not, but like when, that's just that I think God uses to teach us is when David had Jonathan's son.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Mephibosheth.
I can't say that word. I was trying to avoid that. Thanks, Rob. Now you just point out that I can't say it. That like, he just said, "Can anybody come?" But when the kid came and they said, both of his feet were lame and crippled. In that time, that was really, really bad. Like they were treated horribly and they weren't important. But I think, when God has given us that example in his word is David had him sit at his table. He didn't just give him money. Oh, Jonathan's son is crippled. Here, I'll buy him a house that's wheelchair accessible. What?
Right.
But like, no, come and feast with me. Sit at my table. And so, I mean, there's just so many stories out there, just about God was so intentional with these people with disabilities. I mean, if you think about it, the entire gospel is about him pursuing the broken.
Yeah, it is.
Not about him building a bigger church, not about him being admired by his follower, It's about him seeking out those who were hurting, those that were teased, those that were left alone. And I feel like both Keystone and 3418, like those are my people. My people are the ones that get teased and get left out. And so I do just, want us to follow the Lord's example and be intentional in pursuing them and seeing them. And I mean, just in honesty, I feel very blessed by this church. I don't think in any steps of Keystone or 3418 in starting the ministry, building the ministry, wanting our ministry to be involved, I don't think I've ever received pushback from any ministry about or any leadership person about my people who struggle needing to be loved. It's just amazing, like how great the people here have been, with my 3418 and with my Keystone, that I do feel really, really supported. I think the families feel like they have a place here and that they're accepted here and that this is their church and this is their church family. But things like going to women's Bible studies or being in a small group, it's like, no, we're part of the bigger church, and on Sunday, people know my kids, and people say hi, and blah, 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 But I do think that my family still kind of feel on the outskirts of small groups here.
Sure.
I don't mean small groups as in Bible study
the
groups.
official small group,
right,
yeah.
like men's ministry, women's ministry, whatever,
right.
those. And so that's just a constant thing I'm trying to, even when I think about families, like if you're in a Bible study and the mom, you're in there and you're in there with a mom that has a child with special needs, like it's really hard for them when it's time for prayer requests because you and me, like we have prayer requests like, oh my gosh, my son has his exam, this is so important to him, or my daughter has her first date and, we're really afraid, or and a lot of times when we're saying normal stuff, that it is fine and it's fine to share and that is a prayer request and no one's gonna, but like their child will never take an exam or have a date. And so seeing them doesn't mean, oh, I won't say those things because it hurts their feelings. No. seeing them just means that you have that in the back of your head.
Right.
Right. So you're not treating them different. You're not saying things because you're worried it'll hurt their feelings, but you have an awareness of what is going on with them when you're sharing them or when you invite them to something. Like when you invite them to a fun event, and they can't come, and you're like, they never come. Just get a babysitter. Like that would be an example. Like, just get a babysitter. They can't get babysitters. So I'm not asking you to do anything but realize they can't get babysitters. So how you pursue them or how you offer them or how you interact with them, do it like you would anybody else, but just with that knowledge in the back of your head that their life looks very different.
I think if I could wrap, I'm thinking of just one verse in particular.
Yeah.
Love covers a multitude of sins. And just thinking about what you're saying and being willing to say, and I've said this before, even during our welcome and announcements, when you go to greet someone at Chapelgate, there's people who've been here for 30 years that I've never met.
Me too.
And I walk straight up to them like a puppy dog. Hey, I'm Rob. What's your name? And how long have you been here? Well, we've been here 30 years. And it could be really easy for me to be like, oh, that was uncomfortable. That was awkward. How maybe I offended them because, I didn't know they'd been here so long. But here's the reality. Love covers a multitude of sins.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a sense in which I put myself out there trusting that you have the Spirit of Jesus inside your heart. And he's going to help you look over some of that unintentional awkwardness, if
right.
you will. And that applies so well, I think, to this conversation, is to be willing to say hey, I've walked past you for months. And because your kid was, making noise or doing this
right.
or the other, or I didn't know, and you seemed like you were frazzled and busy, I've never stopped to introduce myself. Maybe this Sunday's a different Sunday.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the
Absolutely.
first Sunday where I go, hey, I'm Rob. What's your name?
Yeah.
And who are your kids? And just to say sort of let it grow a little bit. Let it happen.
Right.
And don't be so afraid of making a mistake that you avoid engaging because that engagement really matters.
Oh my gosh. Absolutely. It's just so hard for these people. I think about even 30 for 18. Do you know how hard it is on a Sunday when everybody's in the lobby eating donuts to walk into the 3418 support group? That takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of courage. So here you have a group of people who already feel isolated, they feel embarrassed, and they're taking that risk of now going to that group. So it's really important that you still, people, I know we've talked in the group before about how when they're coming to 3418, everyone kind of looks away.
Right, yeah.
Oh, that person will be embarrassed if I look at them because they're walking into the support group. And we know that, and that can just be really hard. Don't look away. It's better to ask a question about it or just start a conversation than try not to embarrass them.
Yeah, it's funny, right? We think about I don't want to make them uncomfortable,
right?
As if I'm not carrying around my own baggage. If we could see it, right?
Right.
If we saw the baggage that Jesus sees us carry, right? I struggle with pornography. Oh, I have fits of anger that would be so embarrassing if anyone ever saw that. Oh, I'm highly anxious and I'm worried all day on Sunday about something that's going to happen Monday at my job. Right. I barely paid attention to the sermon. Jesus sees all that. Now we don't, right? Because I smiled and I worshiped and I did the things.
Pastor Rob.
Yeah, right. And it's not that we shouldn't do those things, but there's a sense in which it's if we started to see each and every person in that room, each and every person in our church, as a person who is in a struggle,
Absolutely.
in a fight,
right.
broken in a way that I don't know, then all of a sudden I go, so you're broken left, I'm broken right, but we're still both broken.
Absolutely.
We both need Jesus.
We both need Jesus.
And so almost okay, yeah, we're just a big ball of mess, but for the grace of God and the promise of what's to come.
Exactly. It's so funny because it is that whole like they feel when people don't talk about these things, then they do feel like their sin is worse.
Yeah, I can talk about these things over here,
Right.
but not that.
Right.
Don't talk about that.
Right. Like I can be kind of depressed, but bipolar. I can't be bipolar because then whatever. And I do feel like with mental health, especially like 3418, I do feel like for some reason those people, myself included, I'm anxious, I have anxiety, is we can be made to feel, or just ourselves to feel that like we have that bigger sin.
Right.
You know, even though there is no bigger sin. Some sins have bigger consequences maybe, but God does not see bigger sin. You know, he does not see as bipolars, you know, being, well, it's not a sin, but, and so I just think that for those people, especially, I just feel like my 3418 people are so brave because the church, like for the special needs families, everyone, you know, school, neighbors, people at the store, whatever, kind of ignore them or are awkward or stare, you know, everywhere is hard for them.
Yeah.
You know, someone once said this really good, like we are not wheelchair accessible. But that in a global sense, I had a mom say that to me once, because I was like, "That's not wheelchair accessible," and she just looked at me dead serious. It was at one of our mission trips, and she goes, "Everyone says that we're all wheelchair accessible." She goes, "We're not. You know, like there's just not an easy way for us. You know." So everything, everywhere, with people who struggle with mental health issues, the church is the hardest place to be. Because in church, the first and foremost response that people get in a church, if they talk about their mental health, is, are you in the Word? What's your prayer life look like? Anxiety is a sin, which is my very least favorite. You should pray more. If you're focusing on God, then you won't be focusing on your depression. Like the church is the place that can judge mental illness much more harshly than anywhere else. Since we do that, and that's why I say, like, those people that are involved in 3418 or the people that don't come to 3418 is probably because it's really hard to go into a church and ask for help. And the people in the church don't see it as a struggle or pain or a sickness. They see it as sin.
Yeah. Yeah, almost like it's decisions that you're making that's causing
Right.
this problem. If you just change your decisions or
Right.
change your behavior.
Right.
And yeah, man.
And so for the people that are involved in that, like I have people from 3 churches other than here that come to that, and because at their church they can't talk about it, because the only response they've ever gotten from people at their church has been a response that made them feel like the person was telling them that it was a sin.
Yeah.
And that's really, really painful, because some of the most amazing die-hard prayer warriors and solid believers deal with very serious mental health issues, you know? And so when you think about what we can do to help these people, and I even sitting here, I don't know practical specifics of what it looks like, but when you talk with these people, just be aware, be very conscious that, that you just don't make them feel like what they're doing is sinful. You know, having depression is a sin, because, you know, the Lord says find joy in everything. You know, like they get that a lot. And so when 3418 started, and, you know, Mike and I were talking, that was my goal. Like when you start ministry, you have to like write what your vision and your goal, and they have to back you or whatever. My goal was to be a church community that treated mental health issues like a struggle or an illness, not as a sin issue or a weakness.
Tonya, I think that's beautiful, and I think it's a good reminder. And we're kind of closing out here. Just from your conversation, I'm thinking like, what are 2 or 3 things that I have learned that I'm going to put into practice? And the first is to lean in, right? Like lean in. You see that person, like introduce yourself. Like, hi, I'm Rob. Like, it's okay that maybe the reason I'm introducing myself to you is because I know that you have a special needs kid, right? Like maybe I'm just like, hey, I'm going to go out of my way to make sure I see you. So that was one. And then 2, I think just summarizing some of your almost like philosophy of just being like, learn as you go, like if I learned that, that was just, like, we don't say it like that, like,
Right.
okay, great.
Yeah. That's
now
okay.
I know. And I'm going to bank on the fact that God's grace is big enough to cover my stupidity
Absolutely.
or my awkwardness.
Absolutely.
And I'm just going to continue to go forward because that's what Jesus does. And I think to just close out, like a challenge that's really been in my devotional life is when Jesus turns to his disciples and he's talking about, if they hate you, it's because they hated me first. If they persecute you, it's because they persecuted me first. And then he says something really interesting. He says, is a servant greater than the master? No. So what I have gone through, you will go through. And we see that almost like a warning, and it is. Like, count the cost, right? Lest you begin building and find out you ran out of money and everybody laugh at you, right? But also it's an invitation because Jesus came that they may have abundant life. And so what I'm learning in myself, and I'm seeing it so vividly in your ministries, is we as a people of God are called to follow God. And where does God go?
Goes into the dark.
Into the
broken.
darkness.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
so I go, and here's the promise. There's abundant life there. And that's a mystery and it's confusing. But by faith, like I think God is telling us all, follow me there. You will be surprised.
Absolutely.
And so I'm really grateful for the ministries you're doing. I'm grateful for your friendship here on staff and just the way that God has continued to use your passion, but also just his own testimony in your life to be an encouragement and an example to us, and that is to his glory and our good. And so I just thank you for this time. And if people want to learn more, email is good.
Absolutely. Tonya.Cherry@chapelgate.org.
Yeah, and if you need to, go to our website, find it, look up the Keystone Ministries, look up 3418. If you feel like you could benefit from those ministries, do benefit. And if you feel like you could be a benefit to those ministries, be a benefit. And
Absolutely.
so, Tonya, thanks for being with us, and we'll catch you guys next week for another episode of In the Fire.